If we want fewer broken men, fewer fractured relationships, fewer people quietly checking out of life, we have to stop telling men what not to be, start showing them what to become. Right now in our society, masculinity exists in a vacuum. We talk endlessly about toxic masculinity, but we almost never define healthy masculinity. And when you leave a vacuum unfilled, something extreme may rush in to occupy the space. Let's ground this in data. 4 out of 5 suicide victims are men. 80% of all of those arrested for violent crimes are men, but only 42% of college degrees are being earned by men. 1 out of 3 men say that they struggle to understand their role in society, believe that discussing mental health is a sign of weakness, and feel that they lack close confidants for difficult conversations. Since the pandemic alone, the number of young men who are now classified as NEET, or not in education, employment, or training, has skyrocketed. And between 2017 and 2025, depression rates in men under 30 have doubled. Meanwhile, online figures promoting hyper-aggressive, grievance-based versions of masculinity are drawing in billions of views. That's not random. That's a signal. We're in the midst of a masculinity crisis. Not because masculinity itself is inherently toxic, but because we as a society have failed to define healthy masculinity. So let's define it. Now, first of all, toxic masculinity is very real, but it is not what masculinity is. It happens when someone who identifies as masculine doesn't understand masculinity. It occurs when strength becomes domination, when emotional suppression becomes identity, and when control replaces connection. It looks like rage instead of responsibility, bullying instead of leadership, arrogance instead of confidence, and reactivity instead of responsibility. But here's what we rarely articulate. Healthy masculinity is strength in service of others. It is grounded, regulated, accountable power. And when men don't have examples of that, they polarize. Some double down into hyper-aggression. Others abandon masculinity entirely, afraid that even the tiniest bit of strength will have them labeled toxic. And neither extreme serves anybody. So how did it come to this? Well, for most of modern history, many men built their identities on being financial providers. In occupations like factory jobs, agriculture, and skilled trades, built the middle class and gave a lot of men a sense of purpose and direction. Over the past several decades, changes like automation, outsourcing, technological shifts have eroded many of these stable labor pathways. Simultaneously, women have surged ahead in higher education. Now, let me be clear. This progress for women is a massive win, and it should be celebrated. I don't for a second believe that helping the male cohort means that we need to walk back on women's progress. But here's the tension. Many men were raised to believe that their worth, their identities, their value is rooted in their ability to provide financially. Now that that has shifted, no one has handed them a new blueprint. And in that identity confusion, resentment grows. Add to that a digital dating marketplace where a small minority of men receive the majority of female attention, where rejection can feel constant and algorithmic, and suddenly you have an entire generation of men who feel economically displaced, romantically invisible, and emotionally unheard. And often when these men express struggle, they're met with rejection for it. And then when finally someone does come along and acknowledge their pain, and they say, I see you, I hear you, I understand you, let me help, these men listen. And that is how extreme voices gain traction. Not because men are inherently evil, but because that is a natural human reaction to one's pain being acknowledged. And when the only voices not acknowledging male pain are extreme, where else are they going to go? Fun fact, I've been practicing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu for nearly 2 decades. On the surface, it's combat, it's aggression, it's wrestling. But what Jiu Jitsu teaches at its highest level is restraint, calm under pressure, controlled strength. I believe healthy masculinity works the same way. It's not the absence of strength, it's strength under control. Sometimes that looks like taking initiative at home without being asked, being decisive without being domineering, holding emotional space, apologizing when wrong. That's not weakness, that's disciplined power. If we want a cultural shift, we need a clear model for healthy masculinity. One that teaches boys that it is okay to be strong and masculine through the lens of healthy masculinity. Here are what I believe to be the 4 pillars of healthy masculinity, backed by research in psychology, leadership studies, and relationship science. 1, quiet strength. Research consistently shows that emotional regulation, not suppression, predicts relationship stability and leadership effectiveness. Healthy masculinity is calm under stress. It does not need to intimidate to feel powerful, and it protects without broadcasting dominance. Now, hot take, it can use force if necessary to protect the vulnerable, but it doesn't seek violence to prove identity. True power doesn't need to advertise itself. 2, decisive leadership. Studies in organizational psychology have found that teams perform best under leaders that combine assertiveness with empathy. Healthy masculinity initiates. It makes decisions when appropriate, and it seeks to reduce chaos, not contribute to it. And this doesn't mean trying to control people. It just means being willing to act. Sometimes that's as simple as choosing the restaurant, making the reservation, handling the logistics so that someone else can rest. Masculine leadership is service. 3, emotional capacity. Contrary to outdated stereotypes, emotional awareness is not feminine. It's just mature and evolved. Men who can identify and articulate emotions have better mental health outcomes and stronger partnerships. Oh, and also, listening to understand instead of to fix or respond is not weakness. It's a skill that requires strength. And that strength is in tolerating discomfort without shutting down. And 4, purpose without ego. Men who anchor their identities in contribution instead of status show higher levels of life satisfaction. Healthy masculinity asks, who am I serving? What am I building? Who feels safer because I'm in the room? If we keep framing masculinity as a problem to eliminate, we are going to keep pushing men towards extremes. And while I don't believe it was the original intention of the very necessary push against toxic masculinity, I do believe that in that pursuit we have failed to build healthy masculinity. To get the cultural shift we desperately need, we need to start mentoring young boys early in emotional regulation and responsibility. We need to highlight strong male role models who embody service, not dominance. we need to redefine provider beyond just money. Define it as protection, stability, emotional presence. We need to create new economic pathways, especially in skilled trades and labor, that restore dignity to young men who choose not to pursue college. And perhaps most importantly, we need empathy for men. When men express struggle, don't dismiss it. Acknowledging male pain does not negate women's progress. Compassion is not a zero-sum game. If we fail to define healthy masculinity, somebody will come in and define masculinity for us. And history shows that when men gather around grievance instead of growth, the consequences ripple across society. But when men are grounded, when strength is disciplined, when power serves, everybody benefits. Women feel safer, children feel protected, communities feel stable, and men feel purposeful. If we want fewer broken men, fewer fractured relationships, and fewer boys checking out into extremes, we have to stop shaming masculinity into silence and start modeling it into maturity. Because masculinity itself isn't the crisis. Our lack of a healthy model is. And that is something we can change. Thank you.